When someone leaves, they often believe that they're making the right choice. In that moment, they convince themselves that moving on is the best decision. But what they don't realize is how the human mind reacts to absence. See, we don't truly appreciate something until it's no longer accessible. That's not just a saying, it's a psychological truth. The moment you remove yourself, the moment you stop being readily available, something powerful happens. The brain starts to crave what it no longer has. At first, they feel relief. They think they've made the right call. But then the silence sets in. The absence begins to take hold. Suddenly, their daily routine feels different. Their world feels emptier. They unconsciously reach for their phone to send you a message only to remember you're no longer there. And in that tiny moment of hesitation, a seed of regret is planted. This isn't about playing games or trying to manipulate someone into missing you. It's about understanding how human psychology works. When something becomes scarce, its value increases. Think about it. The most expensive things in the world are rare: gold, diamonds, luxury brands. They all have one thing in common: exclusivity. People desire them because they're not easily obtainable. The same principle applies to relationships. When you're always there, always available, always responding, there's no urgency, no sense of loss. But the second you pull away, the second you focus on yourself instead of chasing them, you become that rare commodity. And here's the thing: when someone realizes they took something valuable for granted, their mind starts playing tricks on them. They remember the good times more than the bad. Psychologists call this rosy retrospection. The tendency to remember past experiences as being better than they actually were. The fights, the disagreements, the reasons they left, they start to fade. What remains? The warmth of your presence, the way you made them feel, the moments they never thought they'd miss. And this is where regret begins to take root, because now they're no longer in control of the narrative. They start questioning their decision. They start wondering if they made a mistake. And that's when they realize your absence has more power than your presence ever did. The biggest mistake people make after a breakup is chasing, begging, trying to convince someone to come back. But what they don't realize is that the more you chase, the more you push them away. It's human nature. People don't value what's easily available. The second you try to force someone to stay to see your worth, you've already lost. Because attraction, respect, and desire can never be built through desperation. They are built through presence, or more accurately, through the strategic absence of it. Think about it. When someone walks away, they expect you to react emotionally. They expect you to cry, to plead, to fight for them. That's what most people do. But when you do the opposite, when you remain calm, unbothered, and completely in control, it disrupts everything they assumed. Now they're confused. They start wondering, wait, why aren't they chasing me? Do they not care? Did I make the wrong choice? This is the psychology of detachment, the power of showing them that you are not dependent on their presence for your happiness. And that shift, it's unsettling, because when someone thinks they have control, they feel secure in their decision. But when you take that control away, when you stop reacting, suddenly the tables turn. Now they're the ones wondering about you. Now they're the ones questioning themselves. See, science backs this up. There's something called the Zeigarnik effect. It's a psychological phenomenon where people remember unfinished business more than things that have closure. When you chase, when you beg, when you try to convince them, you give them closure. You confirm that leaving was the right decision. But when you walk away without resistance, When you disappear without a fight, they don't get that closure. Instead, they're left with an open loop. And the mind hates unfinished business. It keeps returning to it, thinking about it, obsessing over it. This is why the most powerful thing you can do when someone leaves is simply let them go. Not with anger, not with sadness, but with quiet confidence. A silent knowing that you don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Because the moment they sense that energy shift, the moment they realize you are completely fine without them, that's when the regret starts creeping in. That's when the regret starts creeping in. One of the most powerful forces in human psychology is the fear of loss. People don't truly appreciate something until they feel like they're about to lose it, or worse, that they've already lost it for good. And this is exactly why the best thing you can do when an ex walks away is to create distance. Not fake distance. Not I'll pretend to move on, but secretly wait for them. No, because when you truly detach, that's when their mind starts working against them. See, people have a tendency to rewrite history. When someone first leaves, they feel certain about their decision. They focus on everything that went wrong, everything that bothered them. But as time passes, something interesting happens. Their brain starts filling in the gaps. Suddenly, they're not thinking about the fights, the disagreements, or the reasons they walked away. Instead, they start remembering the good times, the way you made them feel, the moments of laughter, the little things they took for granted. Why does this happen? It's because of something called selective memory bias. Our brains don't store every detail of a relationship. Instead, they reconstruct memories based on emotions. And here's where the science gets interesting. When you're still in their life, when you're texting, checking in, or lurking in their social media, they don't have space to miss you. You're still present. But the moment you step back completely, their mind starts playing tricks on them. They start wondering, what are they up to? Are they moving on? Are they happier without me? And that's when the regret starts creeping in. Because deep down, everyone wants to feel like they were special, that they were irreplaceable. But when they see you thriving, when they realize you're not just surviving without them, but actually becoming better, suddenly the power dynamic shifts. And this is why so many exes come back when you least expect it. Not because they had a sudden change of heart, but because space forced them to reevaluate what they lost. It made them realize that maybe, just maybe, they walked away from something rare. One of the most fascinating aspects of human psychology is how deeply we are wired to desire what feels unattainable. When something or someone becomes too familiar, too predictable, we naturally begin to take it for granted. It's not intentional, it's just how the brain works. But the moment that familiarity is disrupted, the moment something we once had easy access to suddenly becomes distant or scarce, everything changes. And this is precisely why the concept of scarcity is so powerful when it comes to regret. Think about it. Why do luxury brands limit the availability of their products? Why do people want what they can't have? It's because the human brain places higher value on things that seem exclusive or hard to obtain. The same principle applies to relationships. When you were readily available, constantly texting, constantly seeking validation from your ex, there was no sense of loss, no urgency, no fear that they might be making a mistake. But the moment you remove yourself, the moment they see that they are no longer your priority, they start to feel it. Now, here's where the science backs it up. Studies on behavioral psychology show that when people experience scarcity, whether it's in resources, time, or relationships, their perception of value skyrockets. What was once ordinary becomes extraordinary. This is why when you detach, when you stop giving them your energy, they start questioning everything. Wait a minute. Did I make the right choice? Were they actually more valuable than I thought? That doubt is what plants the seed of regret. And this isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulation. This is about shifting your energy away from proving your worth to someone else and instead allowing them to realize your worth on their own. Because when someone believes they can always have you, they won't rush to get you back. But when they fear they've lost you for good, that's when the chase begins. So, regret is one of the most powerful emotions a person can experience, and it often comes too late. When someone leaves, they convince themselves they're making the right choice. They believe that they can do better, that life without you will be easier, more exciting, or more fulfilling. But what happens when reality doesn't match their expectations? What happens when they realize that what they walked away from was actually something rare? Science tells us that people often idealize the past, especially when their present situation doesn't measure up. It's called the rosy retrospection bias, the tendency to remember past experiences as being better than they actually were. That's why so many exes suddenly pop back up in your life when things aren't going as planned. At first, they convince themselves they made the right decision. But the moment they face difficulty, their mind starts rewriting history. They don't remember the challenges. They remember your kindness, your support, the way you made them feel. And now, instead of looking forward, they start looking back. And this is exactly why your silence is more powerful than words. If you're constantly reminding them of your presence, checking in, hoping they'll realize their mistake, you rob them of the chance to truly miss you. But when you pull back completely, when you give them nothing to hold on to, their mind starts filling in the blanks. They start wondering, what if I was wrong? That uncertainty is what creates regret. That seems to scare them of correct. That uncertainty is what makes them start to reconsider everything. The truth is, people don't appreciate what's always available, but when they feel your absence, truly feel it, that's when they begin to understand what they lost. And by the time they realize it, it might be too late. When someone leaves, they often believe that by walking away, they are gaining something. They believe that by cutting ties with you, they are opening doors to something new, something better. But what they don't understand in the moment is that this action is not a simple decision. It is a complex emotional choice with consequences that only time will reveal. Let's take a moment to explore why this happens. When a person is in a relationship, there are highs and lows, the everyday battles and the small victories. But when that relationship ends, they may initially feel relief, like they've escaped a difficult situation. They may think, I deserve better, or I need something different. But soon that decision becomes a burden they didn't foresee. Because even in the most challenging relationships, there are always moments of connection, of shared history, of understanding. When they leave behind those moments, and they underestimate how much those moments contributed to their emotional well-being. And then there's the void. When someone walks out of your life, it's not just about the physical space they leave behind, it's the emotional space, the absence of the routines you had, the conversations you used to share, the little things that made your bond unique. They may think that they can replace it with someone new or new chapter in life, but what they don't realize is how deep those connections were, how much they shaped their sense of comfort, love, and security. In time, that void becomes undeniable. It's like they've torn a part of their life out, and no matter what they do to fill that space, it's never quite the same. You see, people often think they can do better, that the grass is greener on the other side, but this belief comes from an illusion. The grass isn't always greener. Sometimes it's just a different shade of brown. The other side might seem promising at first, but eventually they will experience the same challenges they left behind. They will come face to face with the reality that no matter where they go, the fundamental issues they struggled with follow them. The life they live, you'll look outside the systems they put up to secure the life they used to live, but by then it may be too late for them to turn back. What's interesting is that this regret doesn't just stem from missing the person they once loved. It stems from the realization that they may never find someone who understands them the way you did. Someone who accepted their flaws, their quirks, and still showed up every single day. And that's the part that stings the most. The thought that they've lost someone who is truly irreplaceable. And this is why it's so important for you in the moment of their departure to not chase after them. You have to let them go fully. You must let them feel the weight of their decision. Because only then will they realize that by walking away, they didn't just lose a relationship, they lost someone who was truly meant to be there. And it's this realization, this understanding that makes them start questioning their choice. It's the absence of you that forces them to see just how significant your presence really was. By staying silent and giving them the space they need, you're doing something far more powerful than any words could ever do. You're giving them the opportunity to regret, to reflect, and ultimately to reconsider. And when they begin to realize that they made a mistake, they'll have to confront the fact that they might have waited too long to see it. Because the more time passes, the more they understand that regret doesn't always come with an easy solution. It doesn't always come with a chance to make things right. The reality is that regret is a slow burn. It creeps in over time, like a shadow that grows longer and longer until it overtakes them. They will realize that what they had was real, but something that they may never get back. And by then, the power of detachment, your ability to let go, will be their only reminder of what they lost. It's painful to think that sometimes people only realize the value of what they had when it's too late. But the truth is, you can't make them see it sooner. They have to come to this realization on their own, in their own time. All you can do is stand back, maintain your strength, and know that with time, regret will settle in. The absence of you will make them see what they didn't see before. And when that moment of regret comes, you'll know that you didn't chase them, beg them, or try to fix things. You let them go, and in doing so, you gave them the chance to miss you. You gave them the space to reflect. And that in itself is the greatest lesson of all. Because when they finally understand what they lost, it will be a lesson they'll carry with them forever. When you detach from someone, you give them the space they need to reflect and reconsider. This space is vital because it forces them to experience the absence of what they had. And it's in this absence that they begin to recognize the value of your presence. You see, people don't always realize what they have until it's gone. In the midst of the relationship, there's a comfort in the routine, in the constant presence, in the little things you do for each other. But once that's no longer there, a shift happens. Suddenly, the things they took for granted begin to weigh on them. Let's talk about what happens when you pull away. When you create that distance, it's like a mirror being held up to their actions, forcing them to face the consequences of their decisions. It's easy to take someone for granted when they're always available, always giving. But when you step back and stop responding in the way they expect, it shakes their reality. They begin to notice how much of their emotional energy was spent taking you for granted, and how much of their time and attention was used on things that didn't matter as much as the bond you shared. In this moment of detachment, something profound happens. They start to realize that you are not just a person in their life, you are someone who contributed to their growth, their happiness, and their sense of stability. It's in the absence of your support, your love, and your understanding that they begin to realize how much they truly needed it. People can always see the value of a relationship when it's right in front of them, because they're often too focused on what they want in the moment. They're distracted by their own desires, their own struggles, and their own insecurities. But when you step away, you force them to look at things from a different perspective. They can no longer take you for granted. They have no choice but to see what they lost. You might be wondering why this is so important. Well, the simple truth is that detachment is not about revenge or making them regret their actions. It's about giving them the space to grow and come to their own conclusions. You see, when you detach, you're not trying to punish them. You're simply letting them feel the weight of their decision. And the emotional distance you create is often the only thing that can help them realize that they made a mistake. It's like when someone walks away from a great opportunity and only realizes it when they're faced with something far worse. That moment of realization is what makes them truly understand what they had and what they lost. It's important to note that this is not about being cold or indifferent. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you shut down emotionally. It means you stop allowing someone to have control over your feelings and actions. It means you stop chasing after them and trying to fix everything. Instead, you put the focus back on yourself, on your own well-being and your own growth. You show them that you are capable of thriving without their presence. And this, in turn, makes them question whether they were ever really worthy of the person you are. As time passes and they experience the void that your absence has created, they'll begin to look back on the relationship and see things more clearly. They'll reflect on the moments that mattered, the sacrifices you made, and the love you gave. But here's the thing. Once they realize the value of what they lost, it may be too late. Time has a way of shifting perspectives. And while they may regret their decision, the question will remain, did they do enough to make things right? Sometimes the damage caused by their actions is irreversible, and no amount of regret can change that. Detaching also has a profound effect on you. It allows you to rediscover your own worth. When you detach, you stop investing your energy in trying to prove something to someone who doesn't fully appreciate you. Instead, you start investing that energy back into yourself. You remind yourself that you are worthy of love, respect, and attention, not just from others, but from yourself. This process of self-reflection and growth becomes an empowering journey. And as you heal, you begin to see that your worth was never tied to someone else's validation. You start to see that you are enough just as you are. This is why detachment is so powerful. It's not just about making them realize what they've lost, but also about allowing yourself to realize your own worth. When you detach, you give yourself permission to be free from the emotional burden of the relationship. You free yourself from the constant need for validation, and you begin to reclaim your own peace and happiness. Now, there's an important aspect to understand here. Detaching isn't about playing games or manipulating someone. It's not about trying to control their feelings. It's simply about allowing the space for both you and them to reflect, grow, and find clarity. It's about taking back your power and recognizing that you don't need someone else to complete you. You are whole on your own. And once you embrace that truth, you'll realize that nothing, not even their regret, can take away the strength and resilience you've built within yourself. The journey of detachment can be difficult and painful, but in the end, it brings growth and healing. And when they come to realize what they've lost, you'll be in a place of strength, having reclaimed your sense of self and your emotional well-being. You'll be able to stand tall, knowing that you didn't chase after someone who wasn't fully appreciating you. You allowed them to face the consequences of their actions. And in doing so, you allowed yourself to heal, grow, and move forward. So remember, detaching is not about punishment, it's about empowerment. It's about showing yourself and the other person that you don't need them to complete you. You're already complete. And when they realize this truth, it will be a turning point for them, but it will also be a moment of growth and transformation for you. You'll both come to understand the importance of self-worth, respect, and the power of letting go. When you detach, you begin to realize that the emotional investment you were making in someone who didn't appreciate you was draining your energy, leaving you empty. You can't give from an empty cup, right? When you're emotionally invested in a relationship where your needs aren't being met, you're constantly pouring from a well that's running dry. It's exhausting. The more you try to give, the less there is for you. You find yourself losing pieces of who you are, constantly trying to fulfill someone else's emotional needs while neglecting your own. It's a cycle that's unsustainable. And it doesn't matter how much love you give, it'll never be enough if the other person doesn't value it. Detaching isn't just about withdrawing your emotional energy from them, it's about recognizing your own worth. You stop letting someone's lack of appreciation define your value. Think about that for a moment. How often do we let the way others treat us dictate how we feel about ourselves? We wait for them to acknowledge our worth, to validate us, to appreciate the love we're giving. But when that doesn't happen, we feel rejected, devalued, and sometimes even unworthy. Detaching allows you to stop giving that power away. It reminds you that you are worthy, independent of anyone else's recognition. Your worth is intrinsic. It's not something that can be taken away by someone who doesn't see it. And the moment you detach, you are sending a message to yourself, telling yourself that you deserve to be treated with respect, love, and appreciation, no matter who is in your life. The beauty of detachment is that it also creates space for you to reconnect with yourself. When you're not constantly trying to fix or improve a relationship that's draining you, you have the time and energy to rediscover your passions, your goals, and the things that make you feel alive. You start to remember who you are outside of the relationship. You begin to focus on your own growth and well-being. This self-focus is what allows you to heal. It's what allows you to start building a new life for yourself. One that doesn't rely on someone else for validation or happiness. Think about the times when you were so absorbed in a relationship that you forgot about the things you once loved doing, the activities that used to bring you joy, or the dreams you had before the relationship started taking up all of your time and energy. Detaching gives you back that time, that space, that freedom. It's a chance for you to invest in yourself again. You can take a step back and ask yourself, what do I want for myself? What do I need to feel fulfilled? And when you ask yourself these questions, you start to find the answers that have been waiting inside of you all along. But detaching is not just about focusing on yourself. It's also about giving the other person the opportunity to reflect on their own actions. Think about it. When you're always there, always available, always trying to make things work, they never have to face the consequences of their behavior. They don't have to feel the weight of their actions. But when you detach, they're forced to sit with the reality of their situation. They have to come to terms with the fact that they let something valuable slip away. It's in this space that they begin to realize the gravity of their actions. They start to see how their behavior affected you, how their choices created distance between you two. They begin to miss the things they took for granted, the conversations, the emotional support, the simple presence of someone who genuinely cared. What happens next is crucial. They start to regret. But here's the truth. Regret alone doesn't change anything. It's what they do with that regret that matters. Some people, when they realize what they've lost, will try to come back and make amends. Others may sit in their regret, but not take the necessary steps to rebuild the relationship. And that's where you have to be careful. Just because they regret their actions doesn't mean you should open the door back up immediately. The detachment process gives you the clarity to see whether they've truly learned from their mistakes or whether they're simply trying to fill the void created by your absence. One of the most empowering aspects of detachment is the way it changes the dynamic. You stop being reactive, you stop chasing, and you stop waiting. Instead, you start living on your own terms. This shift in power is incredibly powerful. It's not about manipulating the other person. It's about taking control of your own life. You're no longer letting their actions dictate your happiness. You're choosing to be happy regardless of whether they come back or not. And this shift changes the way you view the situation. You stop looking at it from a place of desperation and start seeing it as an opportunity for growth, both for yourself and for the other person. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who needs validation from them and start seeing yourself as someone who is whole, complete, and deserving of respect. When you detach, you begin to value your own peace of mind above all else. No relationship is worth sacrificing your own mental health, your own happiness, and your own sense of self-worth. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about the other person. It means you care enough about yourself to protect your emotional well-being. You realize that your peace of mind is the foundation for everything else in your life. And once you establish that foundation, you build a life that is strong, resilient, and grounded in your own truth.